Writer's Den, the magic behind timeless stories.
Let's start with a number. In April of 2022, a single comic book from 1961 sold for $1.5 million.
That is wild. And this wasn't Superman's first appearance, or Batman's. This was Fantastic Four #1, a book from a publisher that, at the time, was barely keeping the lights on.
Exactly. So the question becomes, what was in those pages that made it, as one auction house recently put it, the Silver Age dipped in platinum?
It's the question, because that book didn't just launch a superhero team. It launched an entirely new way of telling stories, and, in doing so, created the foundation for the entire modern Marvel universe.
It's what Marvel executive editor Tom Brevoort called the template for everything that came afterwards. And it came about because the company and its lead writer were on the verge of giving up.
You have to picture the landscape in the late 1950s and early 60s. The comics world was DC's world. They had Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and in 1960, they assembled them into the Justice League of America, which was a massive hit.
These were gods among mortals, archetypes. They were perfect, they had secret identities, and they always did the right thing. Meanwhile, Marvel, or Atlas Comics as it was known then, was, according to the historical record, a relatively small publisher struggling to keep pace.
Struggling is putting it lightly. Their publisher, Martin Goodman, was playing golf with someone from DC who was bragging about the sales of the Justice League. So Goodman comes back and tells his top editor, a guy named Stan Lee, go create a superhero team to compete with them.
And by all accounts, Stan Lee was completely burned out. He was, in his own words, disillusioned by the repetitive, formula-driven superhero characters. He was writing monster comics, romance comics, westerns, and he was ready to quit the industry entirely.
It's such a critical moment. The directive from on high is copy our competitor's successful product. But the person tasked with executing that vision is so fed up with the status quo that he's about to walk away forever.
And this is where the story turns. According to History.com, Lee's wife, Joan, gave him some fateful advice. She essentially told him, before you quit, why not write one comic the way you've always wanted to? Make it one you can be proud of. What's the worst that can happen? They fire you? You'll want to quit anyway.
That is an amazing creative catalyst. He had nothing to lose. So instead of making another team of perfect archetypes, he decided to create characters with flaws, fears, and everyday concerns. He wanted emotional realism.
And he partners with the legendary artist Jack Kirby. Together, they break all the rules. The comic opens with the team already formed. They don't have secret identities. They bicker. They're famous, but also feared. The Thing is trapped in a monstrous form, and he's furious and depressed about it.
The tension between Ben Grimm, The Thing, and Reed Richards' Mr. Fantastic is there from page 1. It's a developing tension that gives the characters immediate depth. And they're not just a team, they're a family. A dysfunctional one, but a family nonetheless.
This was the game changer. Wikipedia's entry on the American comic book notes, this naturalistic style became hugely popular with teens and young adults, especially during the social upheavals of the 1960s. For the first time, readers could see themselves in these heroes.
Even the origin story was ripped from the headlines. Sue Storm uses the space race and the threat of the commies as the argument for their unauthorized flight. It was immediate, it was relevant, and it was deeply human.
So they have this revolutionary idea for what to create, but the how is just as important. They develop a new creative process that comes to be known as the Marvel Method.
Right. This isn't the traditional model of a writer handing a full script to an artist. Vanity Fair and other sources describe it as a more collaborative and sometimes contentious process. Lee would provide a synopsis or a rough plot outline.
Wait, so not even a full script? Just a conversation and an outline?
In many cases, yes. He'd give Kirby the broad strokes, and then Kirby, the master visual storyteller, would go off and draw the entire 20-something page issue. He would plot the story visually, deciding the pacing, the panel layouts, the action. He was basically the director.
That's incredible. It's like building the architecture of the story visually first. It reminds me a bit of the process we discussed on Elektra Assassin, where Sienkiewicz was given so much freedom it was almost like jazz. But this seems more structured, yet still artist-driven.
Exactly. After Kirby had penciled the whole book, he'd hand the pages back to Lee, who would then write the dialogue, captions, and sound effects to fit the art. It allowed for Kirby's unmatchable sense of design and unparalleled sense of wonder to drive the narrative engine.
So Lee is adding the voice, the humor, the specific character pattern that became so famous. And Kirby is providing the cosmic vision, the raw narrative power. They produced 102 issues together that way between 1961 and 1970, an absolutely extraordinary creative output.
But that same method, that collaborative synergy, also contained the seeds of one of comics' most enduring controversies.
The credit. Who was the true author? As their creations became more and more famous, their recollections of the process started to diverge. Lee always emphasized co-creation, while Kirby often claimed the core ideas, including the Fantastic Four itself, were his.
The research from comicbookhistorians.com offers a really nuanced take. It suggests that early on, Lee provided more detailed outlines, but as their collaboration progressed, he gave Kirby more and more freedom, making Kirby a much more significant author of the plots.
And you can see where the friction would come from the Marvel Method itself. If Kirby draws a whole scene with a specific intent, and then Lee writes dialogue that completely changes that intent, who's the author of that scene? By issue number 67, Kirby was reportedly disappointed with exactly that.
There's no better example of this than the creation of the Silver Surfer. Kirby conceived the character, adding him into the Galactus storyline on his own. In his mind, the Surfer was an alien being created from scratch by Galactus. He was meant to be discovering emotion and humanity for the first time.
But that's not his origin story. Stan Lee, when he got the pages, loved the character so much, he decided to give him a more tragic, human backstory. He scripted him as Norrin Radd, a man from a utopian planet who sacrificed himself and his love to save his world.
It's a perfect microcosm of their differing philosophies. Kirby's epic, cosmic, almost mythological vision versus Lee's focus on flawed, relatable, Shakespearean-style tragedy. Both are valid, but they're fundamentally different stories, and it's a tension that was never fully resolved.
Regardless of the creative friction, the impact of what they built with Fantastic Four #1 was immediate and seismic. It wasn't just a successful comic, it was a new business model for Marvel.
It completely redefined their strategy. The success of FF1 led directly to the creation of the Hulk, Spider-Man, Thor, Iron Man, the X-Men, all within the next couple of years. And crucially, they all existed in the same world. The Fantastic Four might show up in a Spider-Man comic. The Hulk could fight the Thing.
They created the shared universe. It's a concept that completely dominates blockbuster entertainment today, but it started right there. It makes the whole greater than the sum of its parts. You don't just buy one book, you're buying into an entire world.
It's a profound strategic difference from other landmark comics we've discussed. When we talked about Watchmen or The Dark Knight Returns, we were talking about works that redefined the tone and artistic ambition of comics. They were hugely influential, but they were self-contained masterpieces.
That's a great point. They were designed to be finite. Fantastic Four #1 was the opposite. It was designed, intentionally or not, to be the first brick in a sprawling, never-ending cathedral. As Time magazine put it, it catalyzed the distinctive Marvel style and fueled the entire Marvel universe.
It reinvigorated Stan Lee, cemented Marvel's transformation from a minor publisher into a pop culture powerhouse, and as Brevoort said, set the template. Every Marvel story that came after owes its existence to the creative and strategic bets made in that one issue in November 1961.
Which brings us back to that $1.5 million sale. That price isn't just for a rare comic book, it's for a cultural artifact. It's the founding document of modern Marvel.
Absolutely. And its legacy is everywhere. In 2025, Manhattan officially renamed a street corner Jack Kirby Way/Yancey Street, making a fictional place from the comic a real-world landmark to honor its co-creator.
And look at the upcoming MCU film. The director, Matt Shakman, and Kevin Feige have explicitly stated their aesthetic is when Kirby meets Kubrick. They're consciously recreating the cover of Fantastic Four #1 and even naming the film's Earth 828 after Kirby's birthday, August 28th.
It's a direct acknowledgement of the source. They're honoring the visual architect of this universe. The end credits even include a Kirby quote about creators. After decades of debate, the cultural consensus seems to be settling on celebrating Kirby's immense, foundational contributions.
It's amazing. A comic born out of a desire to quit, a mandate to copy a rival, and a contentious collaboration ends up being the game changer that kicked off the wave of conflicted and troubled superheroes.
It shifted the entire paradigm of what a hero could be. They weren't just powerful, they were human. They argued, they had doubts, they failed. And in doing so, they created something far more enduring than the perfect archetypes they were meant to imitate.